Welcome, everyone.
So
Hello, everyone. This is the Alaska HPNA, our stories from the field. Today, we're joined by Cheryl Johnson. Is that right? Who is the Director of Nursing at the Ancora Hospice here in Anchorage. We are so happy to have you with us, Cheryl. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of your background in nursing and what brought you to hospice specifically?
So I am from Alaska, but I lived in California. That's where I got my nursing education. I moved to the Bay Area, and it's it's a market that is really hard to get jobs for nurses in the hospital. It seems like it would be easy, but there's a lot of politics involved. So what ended up happening is I applied for a hospice position there, and I interviewed over the phone, and then I did an in-person interview. And so I basically fell into hospice. I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a try. And I knew within a few months that was what I was meant to do. I knew it was a passion. I knew that I loved every moment of my nursing that I did with the families and the patient and just the whole end of life care and dignity that we give patients. So that drew me in. At 5 months, I really hit my stride, because I think that when you come in as a case manager, you have to learn how to time manage. And that was huge, trying to because you have a lot of autonomy. So you have a lot of freedom. And if you can't be successful at time management, it's not a successful place for a case manager if you can't get your time management down. So that was huge for me. But as a case manager, and I'll just segue into becoming a leader, I saw issues and things going on that I wanted to solve as a case manager, but didn't have the ability to, because I wasn't the leader. And I thought, oh, I could be a leader and I could help even more. I could duplicate myself, because I became very efficient as a case manager. Okay, so I'm going to explain the Bay Area competition in hospice is there's about 50 to 60 hospices. Wow. So I became very efficient and didn't realize I was doing anything differently, but I would watch the numbers for our company go up in facilities and the numbers for the competition go down. And the way that I saw that myself doing this, I took very good care of the facilities, families, doctor. I had a good rapport with all of those things, and they intertwined, and they wanted to continue to have me as the case manager. So doing that, I thought, well, I need to duplicate myself. And anytime I trained nurses, I just tried to duplicate what I was doing, because it was successful. So I went on my 90 days. So even 90 days in, I knew I wanted to be a leader. I went to the administrator and I'm like, what do I need to do to be a leader in this company? I'm 90 days in, never been a hospice nurse. And he just said, Cheryl, you got to be here a year. So fast forward my year, I become an assistant director of nursing in the Bay, and continue to grow. It has a lot to do with your ability to be able to speak to people and talk to people and help them to understand this process, because it's very confusing. And people take that word hospice and they change it and think you're going to kill the patient. I mean, that's not what this is about. Yeah. This is about taking care of you at end of life. So I just crave leadership and I crave hospice. So it's a good fit for me.
That's awesome. And that's such a good point about the interdisciplinary piece of it, how it's like a multi-skilled role, and that you are having different relationships with different roles and also helping to support the family and the patient. That's a really great example.
And it really is about relationships.
Yeah, it is. Building relationships is my number one thing that I do as a leader. Everybody matters. Every nurse, every patient, every family member, they matter and they have a story. And I genuinely want to know that story. And so I build relationships. And in Anchorage, this market, relationships is huge. I mean, people, it's a small community, even though Anchorage is considered the big city. It is a very small community-minded town. And if you build a relationship with one person, even in death, you are somebody that they don't forget. And
Right.
so even as a director of nursing here, I build relationships with the families. A lot of times I shadow my nurses, and in doing so, I get to meet the families, and I just make them feel at ease and let them know if there's anything going on. If you can't reach your nurse, you can reach me. And that just builds a sense of safety for them, because this is very trying, and there is a lot of loose ends a lot of times when people are on hospice that we're trying to help them tie up. And the reason I always explain to them that we need to get these things that don't seem very comfortable to talk about, we need to get them out of the way, so that when we do, what the time that you have left is quality time with your family, and you're not worrying about all this loose ends that could be bogging you down. And then we do the heavy lifting for you and get all the paperwork. We get you to get your funeral home, we get you to get the Comfort One in place, and we explain everything to you in a way that's comfortable and not in your face. So it helps to have a whole team supporting you and not just one or two people.
That's awesome. To that point, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the difference that you've seen from such a busy urban place like the Bay Area, and maybe some of the differences or the challenges with end of life here in Alaska. I know we are the big city, but we are still very different. And there are sort of this thing baked into Alaskans' blood, whether they're from here or not, that I feel a lot of them are just so independent and strong-willed, and they want what they want when they want it. And I'm sure that you see that a lot in your hospice patients. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I'm going to right out the gate. The first difference I noticed when I got here was that in the Bay, 80% of our patients are in facilities.
Mm-hmm.
In Alaska, Anchorage, 80% of our patients are in homes.
Mm-hmm.
So that right there tells me that a lot of our elderly are staying home. We have wives, 89 years old, taking care of their 95-year-old husband. That causes a lot of challenges for us, but we try to adapt and help them as much as we can. We try to give them, education on getting help for PCA help, which is personal care attendant help, or a family. You need to call on a family member to come stay with you, because it's just too much
Mm-hmm.
on the elderly to be taking care of the elderly. And so that's one of the big challenges. The other challenge I know is we all know Alaskans are stubborn, and they don't go along with social norms. That's why we all live here. I mean, that's why people come here and stay. They
Mm-hmm.
like that autonomy with their thoughts. They don't have anybody directing them. They get to make decisions, and they're very stubborn about it. So fast forward hospice. Somehow hospice got thrown out there as something that causes people to die sooner. Whereas studies have shown people on hospice actually live longer, and they have a better quality of life. So
Right.
My thing is it needs to start at the very beginning of an illness to even talk about death. We're all going to die. We're not going to get out of here living. So we need to start talking about it. And I think that's where it starts, is that if a person gets some type of terminal illness or something that's progressing, that should just be part of our conversation with people, just that's an option. Because we can bring people on hospice way before they're going to pass. Yes, it's a 6-month prognosis. It is. But Alzheimer patients, dementia patients, those patients need us more than anything. Families struggle because they remember the patient as they were, and we come in where they're at. And so we partner with them and help them navigate, because you get a lot of caregiver fatigue. So we help navigate that. But hospice isn't necessarily 6 months. You just have to have a terminal illness of some sort. And as long as a patient is declining in some sort of way, you can stay on hospice. But the other side of this is that we must discharge per Medicare guidelines if you're not getting worse. So then if you start to do better, we just discharge you. That's a win-win. You get extra care, you get it all in one place. And if you don't qualify for hospice anymore, we could discharge you over to home health or some other program. So it's not like you're going to be left completely alone, but people get attached to hospice, so they have a little bit of a hard time of release. Once they get on and they get used to us, they don't want to let us go, even if we have to discharge. So
because you guys do such amazing work. Real quick, our last question, just to wrap up, is there anything that you would tell a new nurse graduating who may have an interest in end of life, or even just general advice for any new nurses out there who may not know they have a passion yet for hospice?
So yes, I am open always to even hiring new grads, because for one thing, if this is a lot of times I've heard stories where people go back to school because they felt led to go to hospice. That's one way. They don't always have a hospice rotation with the nursing school. I think that should be part of, I mean, we have a birth. we have a rotation for birth. We need one for end of life, because those are the two most intimate places that you could ever be, birth and death. We should include that. But I am open always to having new grads. Anybody that ever had questions or anything, they can always call and I will answer any questions. But I think that if you have a passion for something, that's what you should be doing. And there should be an open door to be able to explore that.
That is amazing. Thank you, Cheryl. You are a wealth of information and positivity and optimism in the world of hospice. So thank you so much for all the work you're doing in the community, and thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Anyone has any questions, feel free to email us at ahpna2017@gmail.com. And we'd love to hear more stories from you. And thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Cheryl.